everybody. My name is Mark Clifford, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the most underappreciated players in baseball history, Fred McGriff. So with Cooperstown, there's a lot of controversy. There are lots of players people think should get in, a lot of players who people think they should not get in. You know, two of the biggest guys that people always talk about are Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Today, I want to talk about Fred McGriff. I think he is one of the biggest snubs in Baseball Hall of Fame history. For those who don't know, he is a first baseman for the Atlanta Braves during those dynasty years with Glavine, Maddox, and Smoltz. And people tend to be very passionate about sabermetrics and not that much about counting stats, but I think Fred McGriff is an example of where counting stats really matter. So Fred McGriff was just a stellar player. He hit 493 home runs in his career, which is the same as Lou Gehrig, which is just nuts. He had a 284 batting average and a great 377 on-base percentage. McGriff hit for power, average, and drew walks. He was an amazing offensive player. His biggest knock on his game was that he played first base, which is just an undervalued position, and he just didn't play the best defense there. That kind of impacted his WAR a bit. His WAR was 52.4. Usually 50 is the threshold for Hall of Famers, but 52.4 is considered it's fantastic. It would have been higher if he just played a little better defense, but you know, no player is perfect. Just for reference, he hit more home runs than Stan Musial, Willie Stargell, Chipper Jones, Dave Winfield, Yaz, Jeff Bagwell, Vladimir Guerrero, Jason Giambi, Andre Dawson, Carlos Beltran, Cal Ripken, Mike Piazza. Should I keep going? I mean, this guy just really socked the crap out of the ball. He was unbelievable, and all those guys I named are either in the Hall of Fame or borderline Hall of Fame dudes. He even stacks up against more legends. So let's just compare him to Willie Stargell. Stargell was the cornerstone of those great Pirates teams in the 70s, and he was also a first baseman. Stargell played 2 more years than McGriff, but hit 18 less career home runs than McGriff. Stargell had a career batting average of 282, and McGriff had a career batting average of 284. McGriff's OBP was also 17 points higher than Stargell, and Stargell also had 258 less career hits. In every sense, McGriff is better, and the thing that's kind of funny is that Stargell is considered like infinitely better. Like, everybody praises Willie Stargell. If you go to Pittsburgh, they got a statue of him right outside PNC Park. Fred McGriff, you don't really hear a word about nowadays, and he's not really even in the conversation of players that should be in the Hall of Fame. He's just kind of one of those forgotten legends. Just, for his Hall of Fame, ballot, just kind of get a sense. He only garnered 21.7% support in his first ballot on the Hall of Fame, which is just way too low for a guy who is that good. And he's also better. It's hard to compare pitchers and first basemen, but he's also better than, Mike Mussina, Pudge Rodriguez, and Tim Raines, all who were inducted to the Hall of Fame a couple years ago. It really drives me crazy when I hear people kind of praise Mike Mussina as this Hall of Fame pitcher. 3.68 career ERA is just way too high for somebody to be in the Hall of Fame. Yet every sabermetrician just screams that he is so underrated and deserves to try him because his xFIP was the lowest in 1990. It's just absurd. I think Fred McGriff was one of those players that was actually hurt by the steroid era. So back in the 90s, there was just, people were just juicing up. People were smashing home runs. I mean, look at Sammy Sosa, McGwire, Bonds. You look at their home run totals now, and you kind of compare it. You compare McGriff's to it. It just doesn't really seem that high. And McGriff was never a guy who really got accused of steroids. He might have gotten accused, but he never really was caught. And there was never any indication where he really used them. I think if McGriff played in any other era, he's in the Hall of Fame. I think the fact that he played in the steroid era really hurt because it's hard to compare somebody who has like 500 home runs or almost 500 home runs, compare him to Barry Bonds, who has the most home runs of all time, or Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire, who are all in like the top 30 of all time. And I kind of want to go back to the 2017 class. He's better than Pudge Rodriguez and Tim Raines. You know, Raines was a like sabermetric darling. He was a great base stealer. He was a great leadoff guy. But you know, McGriff hit 323 more home runs than him, and he has over 600 more RBIs for his career. Their on-base percentage is similar. McGriff was the all-around more feared hitter during that time. I mean, he was really like that anchor in that Atlanta Braves lineup in the 90s. You know, but Raines is in and McGriff isn't, and it's just simply because, you know, his sabermetrics aren't that great, which I just, you know, it really brings up like, you know, the debate. It's like, do you go with old school statistics? You go with new school statistics. You know, he's also better than Pudge too. You know, he has a slugging percentage in OBP much better than Pudge ever had. You know, of course, Ivan Rodriguez played a much more difficult position, much more demanding position, and he's got a ton of Gold Gloves there. But if we're looking at offensive numbers, you know, I think Fred McGriff's value is much more than Ivan Rodriguez's value, and he was also Ivan Rodriguez was somebody who got caught using steroids. You know, and an article by Forbes, you know, this is the top 20 baseball Hall of Fame snubs, and once again, McGriff wasn't listed on that list. He's even snubbed by the snub articles. It's absurd. They put Bobby Grich as the 4th biggest snub in baseball history. Grich batted .266 with 224 home runs for his career, which is just substantially worse than McGriff. You know, Alan Trammell, who I think just got inducted very recently, or literally just got inducted this year. I can't remember. You know, he has the same batting average as McGriff, but has 500 less RBIs, 308 less homers, and just has a far worse slugging percentage in OBP. It's absurd to me. It's crazy how much people value positions when it comes to the Hall of Fame. It's absurd to me. And you know, too, and you got David Ortiz making it to the Hall of Fame as well. David Ortiz was the worst fielder of all time. Like statistically, he's the worst fielder of all time. So if you want to bring up that conversation about, you know, your position matters, I don't know. To me, it's just very hypocritical. You know, and I just want to talk more about McGriff's on-base percentage for his career. You know, it's higher than tons of Hall of Famers. Al Kaline, Pete Rose, not in the Hall of Fame, but, you know, that's a debate for another time. Hank Aaron, George Brett, and Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. is like the face of baseball now, and he played like 20 years ago. And it's just, you know, to me, it's unfair.